Well, good evening, everyone. Welcome to tonight's episode. I am your host, Tom. Thank you so much for joining us on our weekly live streams where we track the progress of Australia's EV adoption, comparing progress amongst our states and territories, as well as externally comparing ourselves with the rest of the world. Each week we chat to special guests from the EV and renewable space. Hello, if you're watching live, feel free to leave a comment in the live chat, of course, if you are a channel subscriber. A warm welcome also to if you're watching this on replay. And also, I'll just put this stream up. Also, welcome if you are listening to us on podcast as well. Yes, we will be distributing the audio from our live streams from now on to all your favorite podcast directories. So, for example, if you're listening in the car in this lovely lovely Genesis GV60, like I am here this week, then that's what you can do from now on. Send us a photo of where you are listening or watching us on our live streams, and we'll put a photo of that on our next live stream, of course. So, hello and welcome. All right, let's say hello and welcome to our regular guests, of course. That is Riz from Carloop and also Rahul Prasad. Hello, gentlemen. How are we?
Going well, Tom.
Evening, Tom. Yeah, that little bit that you just mentioned there felt like it was a dream within a dream within a dream out of Inception.
That's right.
Very confusing. I get it.
You can't escape us. We are there.
Great work.
All right, so I'm glad you guys have had a good week, as I have too. I hope all of you watching and listening have as well. So thank you for joining us tonight. Well, and of course, thank you to our live stream partners as well. Always thank you to Jaua, Hansho, and EVSE. They are the coupon codes there on screen. Either Tesla Tom 5 for Jaua will work, 5% off site-wide, or Tesla Tom for Hansho and evsc.com.au will give you 15% off for Hansho and also 5% off site-wide for evsc.com.au. Thank you to our live stream partners. And of course, as each week goes on, we have an accessory of the week for each week. And of course, we have to shout out to this product here, Otraford Full Shade. This is the product I reviewed this week, and I was very impressed, by the way. And here it is. I'll just show you a quick clip of it. If I can get it up, here we go. So that's me checking it out. So it's currently available for Model Y, and there I am just playing with it manually. You can open it and close it like that. It's very easy to use. And there's a test of me in the car with it as well. And yes, it does block out a lot of the rays, and I think it'll be very popular come summer in Australia. We did a test in the white Model Y and white Model 3, and we found that this full shade made a 3-degree difference in the sun, 3 degrees Celsius. So thank you to Otraford for supplying this for me to review. Great. So if you want to purchase it, I'll leave a link in the video description, and also it's Tesla Tom coupon code for 10% off, as you can see on the screen there. All right. So let's do a shout out to our members, and yes, thank you very much to our members who support us on the channel. And this week I want to make special mention to the members who've clocked 12 months now on the channel. So here we are: Scott McGregor, Charles Gregory, Riz Actor, the one and only Riz, Viet Hoang, Greg Wilson, Gaffer, Alicia Dugan, and Paula Chappell. You get your special red badges there, as you can see, next to your names. Thank you, Riz.
All right.
All right, so coming up on the show tonight, and by the way, if you want to become a channel member, head out to ludicrousfeed.com for more information, or you can just press click join there if you're watching on YouTube tonight. All right, and also hello to everyone watching on the live stream. I can see all your comments already on the chat there. Fantastic. So good to see you all. All right, so coming up on the show tonight, first up we've got an interview with the representatives from the New South Wales Government, of course, talking about tonight's topic, New South Wales and the approved EV charging stations in our state. And then we'll go through our regular segments, such as new and used EV sales. And then a quick whip around for DC charging news, some more EV charging eye candy. And then we'll round up with some Tesla and other EV news, of course, as well. All right, so those of you who watch our streams regularly will know that we do a DC charging state of origin, but given that is tonight's topic, of course, we're going to bring it up further in the show. And yeah, this it was news last week, and this is a picture of that Riz took at Goulburn Supercharger. I can see Riz in the picture, actually. If you can spot him, leave a comment there. What a champion, Riz. This is a article by Giles Parkinson from The Driven, and the headline was "Biggest Charging Stations in Australia, up to 15 bays to be rolled out in New South Wales." And several other mainstream publications also made note of this story as well. So great to see New South Wales doing its part for the EV adoption in Australia. And without further ado, I want to invite our guests onto the stream tonight, and that is Mr. Dave Malicki and Mr. Bradford Jefferies from the Net Zero Transport and New South Wales Department of Planning, Industry and Environment from the New South Wales Government. So welcome to the stream here, Dave and Bradford.
Thanks, Tom. Good evening. Pleasure to be here.
Thanks, Tom.
Yeah, thanks, gents. So nice of you both to be with us tonight to talk about this very important topic. First of all, a bit of an icebreaker for Dave. I know Dave recently took delivery of an EV. Dave, what did you get?
I did. Yes, so I got a Model Y about 6-7 weeks ago or so. Loving EV ownership. It's really great. I'm kind of getting to experience firsthand what we always talk about around the benefits of electric vehicles, right? Like really quiet, great performance, very cheap. I've got solar at home, so I can charge off my panels. So recharging is essentially a pittance. Emissions free, which feels really good as well. So it's really, really great to have an EV and to be experiencing it. I have to say that I have test driven quite a lot of the EVs on the Australian market at the moment, and I like them all. I like them all in different ways. And in fact, the next test drive day event that we're running in partnership with the NRMA is happening on the 26th of November up in Newcastle. So anyone up around, any Novocastrians should get along to that and check out some EVs.
Yeah, absolutely. And so good that you've got an EV yourself, Dave. Definitely lends a lot of credibility as your role in the New South Wales government here, putting DC chargers. So thank you for that. Now I'm just going to put some key points before we ask Dave and Bradford some questions. So key points from this first funding round: 86 locations listed across New South Wales as approved charging sites. Each site is between 4 to 15 bays, and in total at least 500 bays from this funding round. $39.4 million in total. Again, Dave and Bradford can correct me if I'm wrong there. And 6 providers that I can see received approvals. That is Tesla, Ampol, BP, NRMA, EV, and also Zeus Renewables, which is a solar farm here in New South Wales. So let's put the question to these guys now. So let's start with the bigger picture here, Dave and Bradford. What is the overall ambition of the New South Wales government under this fast charging funding program?
Sure. All right. I'll take that one. So look, New South Wales is aiming to build a really comprehensive public fast charging network. So probably the most comprehensive in Australia, and to make New South Wales essentially the easiest place. Our tagline is to make New South Wales the easiest place to buy and operate an electric vehicle in Australia, and it's really important to have the charging infrastructure to do that. So this particular piece of work under our EV strategy is $149 million for fast charging stations, and it's co-funding. So it's looking to leverage private industry funding as well. And in fact, that first funding round was $39 million of New South Wales government funding, but the total project value was about $94 million in total. So a lot of private investment there. It sits alongside a few of our other charging programs, so they're quite complementary. So we have a curbside charging initiative, one for destination chargers in regional New South Wales, and one focused in on buildings and charging infrastructure in buildings. So a lot of focus on different charging options for people. But with this fast charging program, our overall ambition is to build out about 250 to 275 of these stations right across New South Wales to achieve our coverage goals, which is to have these stations every 100 k's on highways, every 5 kilometres in metropolitan and commuter corridors and that kind of thing. And they're all fully powered with renewable energy. So that's the overall ambition under this particular scheme. Yeah.
Wow, fully powered with renewable energy. That's fantastic.
That's right.
That's one of my questions tonight too. So thank you for answering that already. Here's
Sure.
a comment from Gaffer here. A bit of friendly comp. New South Wales versus other states can only be good for all EV owners, and I 100% agree with that. Thanks, Gaffer. So my first question tonight is looking at the list of approved charging sites, which I'm going to put up now. Actually, 1 second. Here we go. So you guys have got New South Wales government has got a map here of all the approved sites. So I've actually found a more, I guess, a sort of user-friendly map as well that was posted by someone on Twitter, a Supercharger King. So all the approved sites, it's clear that Tesla has received the bulk of the funding, followed by Ampol, BP, NRMA, and EV, and Zeus Renewables in that order. Can you provide us an insight into the decision-making process that went into the funding allocations? For example, how did you decide who received what money?
Yeah, sure. Look, I'm happy to take that question. So what we did in the first instance was design a process that looked at how we could comparatively select sites in a merit-based process. So we had to come up with a fair, equitable, and independent assessment of how those applications would look, and that would look at things like price and non-price criteria. So we published the master plan, which identified about 380 odd zones across the state that we thought would be optimal for placing stations within. And then each of the applicants could bid into those zones, and that within those zones, it was a competitive process. So what we were looking for was value for money, the services offered by the site, things that might have made that site a little bit more tricky to get off the ground, like the connection to the grid. And what we found is as different applicants bid into each of those zones, they were all at different scales with different configurations. So we had minimum requirements, but then it was completely up to whoever put in a bid as to how many bays they wanted to build. So we had a minimum of 4, but they could build as many as they liked. They could then also choose the capacity of those charges outside of the 4 minimum specs that we had put forward. And then they had to comply with what the funding requirements were as well. So they couldn't bid for any more than 50% of the total construction cost of any of the sites, and they could not exceed 490,000 in co-funding per site on average across their bid. So that also included, their bid could include things like on-site solar storage solutions. So we have a large number of batteries going in as part of this rollout as well. Amenities on site, how close these projects were to fruition. So a number of price and non-price criteria. So then we were able to do that analysis, and an external assessment panel were able to go through and look at, well, what is the total cost of the site? What is the benefit that it adds to the network? What is our projected growth rate? How many plugs do we think we're going to need over the next 3, 5, and 10 years? And what is the cost per kilowatt for delivering a station in that area, and the cost per bay? And based on all of those criterion, we were able to select 1 and sometimes 2 stations within a zone that we thought were going to be most meritorious and add the most value to our network.
Okay, so it sounds like funding was fixed for each location. It was sort of allocated to number of stalls each site, proposed per location.
So look, no, it wasn't set. It was completely up to the proponent as to how much they wanted to bid in for. So obviously the less co-funding they requested, the more competitive it would be on price criteria, but it depends on then what other attributes they wanted to put on site. So one of the applicants may put in more, may request more funding for a battery on site, but then we also consider how does that battery affect the overall network, and what value does that bring? So it wasn't always necessarily the cheapest. And different sites have different requirements as well. So some sites, for example, can be quite hard in terms of the augmentation to the network required to connect that capacity there. So they're inherently going to be more expensive anyway. It's purely dependent on where they're located, and some locations across the state are much more accessible for the network than others. So no set price. It's dependent on about, I think there's about 55 different variables.
Okay. Now I see that some installers, so for example, the NRMA has listed 22 kilowatt AC charging stalls as well as the DC charging stalls. Will other providers be required to add AC chargers as well as NRMA?
Yeah, so they all will. Every station will have one of these 22 kilowatt AC chargers, and the rationale for that was to provide some redundancy, right? And so a lot of that redundancy is actually put in place through the fact of having between 4 and 15 charging bays per station. So that provides a lot more opportunity there, even if 1 or 2 chargers might be down at certain times compared to the some parts of the network we're seeing now. So all those providers will provide that 22 kilowatt charger. The minimum requirements were kind of outlined in our funding guidelines when we went to market with this offer, and those kind of stipulated those criteria that Bradford talked about, but also the kind of minimum station composition we wanted to see. So anyone that's really, really keen on understanding the details can just download those and take a look. But I'll probably just like to read out quickly the requirements per station, so that's really clear for everyone what's going to be put out into the market in coming years. So those minimum station requirements was to have at least 2 chargers to service 4 bays concurrently. So it's 4 charging bays, 4 plugs per station, right? A minimum of 2 of those charging bays to be rated at 175 kilowatts per bay, plus or minus 20%. So you're looking at around that mark. A minimum of 2 charging bays rated at 350 kilowatts, and that's plus or minus 15%. So we're looking at those ultra fast chargers there. That redundancy AC plug, minimum connection requirement to site of 500 kVA, and that's quite a big connection, but it also allows for many cars, high-powered cars charging all at once, and then future-proofing, so more plugs at those stations in the future as well. And then we also had a requirement around plug types, a very important question, one that comes up quite a lot. And that requirement, we pointed towards the Federal Chamber of Automotive Industries, and they have essentially a standard or technical statement, and that talks about both those plug types required, and that's CHAdeMO and CCS2. And we just say they must have plugs to meet that standard. And so essentially what that means is it's up to the operators which of those plugs they put in, but we're expecting to see at least 1 or 2 CHAdeMO plugs per station, because there's those cars still using that technology, but possibly the lion's share will be CCS2. That's where most of the universality is moving. So they're the minimum requirements and that you'll see. And of course, many of those stations went beyond those minimum requirements to up to 15 bays.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. I think Riz and I talked about this before. 95% of EVs are CCS2, but we did chat to Anthony from Good Car Company a few weeks ago, and they are bringing a lot of Leafs from Japan, so there might be a requirement for CHAdeMO. It's good to see also that 22 kilowatt AC chargers are required, and I'm glad Tesla is also part of that group, that there'll be hopefully some Tesla destination chargers as well as redundancy. Got a question here from Greg Wilson. Are there any cars that can charge at 22 kilowatts? I thought most were 11, and you're right, Greg. Most cars are 11. Most new EVs are, but as Dave said, it's to do with redundancy that later on in the future, hopefully we'll get 22 kilowatt AC cars that can charge at 22 kilowatts with this requirement. Yep. My next question is, so we kind of touched on this already. The $39.4 million in this round doesn't cover the entire cost of the site, does it? It's sort of a stimulus for them to sort of spend some more on their part too.
Yeah, look, that's right. So the total cost of all the projects, as Dave mentioned before, is about $94 million for these 86 stations. And what we're looking to do is co-fund these charging stations to a level that makes them feasible for the private market. So looking at what that tipping point is. So yeah, our contribution is about 42% overall to all of these charging stations. And the idea behind that is we understand that the demand for some of these chargers may not exist currently, but that demand will be there and will make those sites feasible by the time they're built, because they've got the 18 to 24 month window to build these stations.
Okay, good. Yeah, that was another question later on too. How long will this take? Next question is, are these all new sites, or are some of them upgrades of existing sites? Like, is there a requirement for these sites to use a certain percentage of renewable energy, which I think we touched on already as well?
Yeah, so 100% renewable energy. So the operators understand how much power is flowing through the sites, and then do an acquittal process or purchase green power to fully power those sites with renewable energy. There's some on-site solar, which is great, but in many cases, on-site solar won't cover all the needs. So there'll be some purchases of that. Essentially, all new sites. These are all brand new sites, and that was part of the requirements of bidding in. And the rationale behind that was that we already took account of the existing charging stations across New South Wales in our master planning. So we kind of knew where this kind of nascent early stage network was. At this point in EV uptake, it was about journey enablement, ensuring there was some charging options across there. But at least in this first funding round, our focus was on building out the network, so broadening it, and so they're all new stations. There's definitely a kind of a case for a number of places to have more chargers, and that master plan and all those optimal zones that Bradford talked about cover a lot of those locations as well. Lithgow is a good example. There's I think 2 chargers there. One's been out of sorts for a little while there, so there's essentially one, and that's quite a route through there. So there's lots of I guess need to grow those stations, but we just built new ones. And again, our overall objective is to co-fund between 250 around 270 new charging stations across the state.
Apart from Tesla Superchargers, do you have details as to what brand of DC chargers each provider will be using?
Yeah, look, I can answer that for you. So it was up to each applicant as to which brand of charger they wanted to use. And there's only a handful of operators in the market that do 350 kilowatt chargers anyway. So ABB, Tritium, and Kempower will all feature. But we're agnostic as to what brand was being used, as long as it complies with our rules and it meets our minimum connection requirements and capacity as well.
Okay. And I guess, given it is public funding, it's my money and your money. And, it's been well reported over the last year that some brands have not performed as well. They've had reliability issues. How will the New South Wales government keep these providers accountable to make sure they are maintained for EV users?
Yeah, so that's a great question, and one that has been raised a lot through this process as well. So what we have done is we've stipulated like a minimum service level agreement for all of these charging stations, and it is a minimum of 95% uptime for the whole site on a monthly basis. And that's written into our agreements with each of those providers as well. What we're also beginning to understand in a bit more detail is that reliability concerns drop off the larger the station becomes, because if you've got one site, right, that has one charger that is out, people become perpetually frustrated at that. However, if you're looking at a 15-bay site with one charger out, then the concern is somewhat evaporated. And I think it's also in the best interest of not only the providers, but also the New South Wales government to have high reliability standards and to be seen as providing a service or something that is reputable and reliable. And obviously what we want to do with this as well is assist with that transition and encourage drivers to transition and not have the same sort of range anxiety that they have now, and potentially turn up to a station where all chargers are out.
Yep, that's good to hear. Speaking of public funding, now this is a really hot question amongst users on Twitter and social media. We know Tesla currently only allows its own vehicles to use the supercharger network. Now that we know these new supercharger locations are partially publicly funded, will there be a proviso that Tesla must allow all EVs to use these new bays?
Yeah, absolutely. So all stations under this, with New South Wales government funding under this program, will be kind of universally accessible to all EVs. So the Tesla stations are no exception. There'll be all EV brands able to charge at them. So might explain why some of them are so big to kind of cater for that in the future. And look, whether Tesla open their existing network to other EV brands is a open question, right? And a business decision for Tesla. Of course, it would benefit the EV uptake and the EV industry and those kind of things. But at the same time, there's existing Tesla vehicles and Tesla drivers that expect to be able to charge at Tesla chargers as well. So they'll have to find that balance. And I mean, evidence globally is that they're opening up their supercharging stations in some locations. But at the very minimum in New South Wales, these stations, Tesla stations, will be open to all.
That's very interesting. I'm pretty sure that's breaking news on this channel. I don't think I've heard that mentioned anywhere else. Riz and Rahul.
Just a
We
quick
heard it here
clarification,
first.
Dave. If I could just clarify, would Tesla have their own chargers for Tesla cars separate, and then some bays that would be for non-Tesla brands that they could then charge at those bays in those locations?
Oh, look, our understanding is that the stations that they're building will be of the size described in their application, and you see on the maps, right? So, and we've disclosed that on the master plan map. So Station X over here, it has 10 bays or what have you. And all of those bays that we're funding have to be open to all vehicles. So I think it would, I mean, it's possible that they could put more chargers there and have them exclusively for Tesla vehicles, but it would possibly be quite strange at that location. So.
I mean, you've mentioned that these locations are 42% funded, so they could potentially maybe have 4 out of 10 charges that are for all, and then the rest.
No, the whole station. Yeah, the requirements are on the whole station. It's just that New South Wales government has done 42% of the funding, and the proponents have done the remaining portion. But the rules set relate to the whole station. Yeah.
Okay. Cool. Yeah. All right. So it looks like in 18 to 24 months, we could have a pilot program in Australia for all EVs to use Tesla Superchargers.
Could be. Yep.
Very interesting. Watch this space. All right. So, I mean, yeah, speaking of which, what is the set time? Like, what's the time frame for these to be built?
Yeah, look, so we're looking at with a maximum of 24 months, given that there might be other issues, particularly with the supply chain, things like transmission oil that are quite scarce at the moment. We're expecting a lot of those stations to be built between the 18 to 24 month mark. And there's obviously a lot of work that needs to go into the planning and assessment of these sites as well. However, we've also been talking with all the successful recipients, and many of those sites will be built earlier. And work is already underway on some of those, so connection requests have been made, and we're hopeful we'll see the first of those stations within the next 12 months.
Okay. I've just got a grab here from Treasurer Matt Keane. According to the New South Wales Treasurer Matt Keane, the government's outlay will fund the largest, fastest and most comprehensive public EV charging network in Australia. That's the first out of 3 New South Wales EV charging network funding rounds, and there will be another one later in the year. Tesla will now have 2 years to build 260 bays in 32 supercharger locations across New South Wales in Australia. So it's great to see that we'll have these new spots in 2 years' time. Let's go back to the Tesla Superchargers just for 1 second. I'll just put the one of New South Wales up. There we go. I've noticed that along the major arterial roads out of Sydney, for example, the Pacific Highway or the Hume Highway, there are some sites with many stalls, some cases 9, even 15. For example, Raymond Terrace is quite a popular stop on the road up to Brisbane in the north of Sydney. From Sydney. As an EV driver, that's very comforting for me and the family on road trips. Like, who actually makes the decisions on the distribution and spread of these locations? Is it by the government, or is it, I guess, the individual providers like Tesla to say, all right, we want 15 here, or are you telling them we must have 15 here?
So look, we don't dictate the number of bays that are built at each of those sites, but we do determine where the sites will be built. So before we released funding guidelines and we ran this process, we developed a master plan over 10 months. So this is an online map that can be used by anyone that outlines where we're looking to build and why. And so what we did with that, to find those 380 optimal locations or zones across the state, we looked at key metrics like traffic volumes, overnight stays, the location of those zones to major cabling, substation capacity. There were about 17 key metrics that went into that. And then what we did is we ran a multi-criteria analysis to work out, given the funding that we have, how many zones would we be able to co-fund, and that number sits somewhere between 250 and 275 zones altogether. So that's ideally the number of stations that we're looking to build throughout this whole program. So applicants can only bid into those zones that we've made available. They can't bid outside of them. So those locations have been strategically picked to service, as you've picked up, those major arterial roads, but also those that have high traffic volumes as well. We've also then given an indication of the number of fast charging plugs we think are going to be needed. And we've forecast that based on analysis of driving patterns over specific periods, so holidays, seasonal, all sorts. And the only other point there that's probably worth mentioning is we've had a specific focus on commuter corridors, so those that are traveling to or from work that might have a commute between half an hour and a half that need those quick top-ups, as opposed to curbside charging where an AC charger and an overnight charge would be sufficient.
And it's very interesting. It's a partnership between government and private industry, right? And so if you look at our we've mentioned the master plan map a lot, so go there, check it out. The data's all there and downloadable, right? So in that, we've made predictions based on the data and other data points, how many charges we think by 2031 will that zone will need, based on EV uptake, right, and traveling patterns and so forth. But interestingly, in regional areas, we're not picking locations, we're not picking winners. We're saying here's the zone. It might be a 5 or a 10 kilometre zone, right? And within that, it's up to the commercial operators to find the best locations because they're the experts at that, and then for them to propose to government how many bays they want to see in those locations. So our minimum is 4, but then beyond that, that's up to them, and it's a commercial decision, right? So where there's much higher trafficked areas is a better place to put a larger charging station. So that's the way it's been going, which has been good to see.
Yeah, I'm seeing a lot of comments in the chat about the Tesla cables not being able to possibly reach some of the other non-Tesla EVs. Obviously, that's a decision for Tesla to make, not from the government, about what cables to use and where. There was one point actually raised a couple of times. You mentioned earlier, Dave and Bradford, that these chargers need to have some sort of CHAdeMO access for the cars that use CHAdeMO. Will you be asking Tesla to install CHAdeMO chargers at their sites?
Do you want me to take that one, Dave?
Yeah, you have a go. Yep.
Yes. So look, the idea is that they will have to supply at least one plug of each charging type. So the CHAdeMO and the CCS2 at each site. That's but as to how many bays those plugs are available at is a decision completely for the applicants themselves. So they can choose the balance as long as there is charging options for both.
Yeah, and there's accessibility is is quite a principle of what we're doing, and it's a higher order thing. So we look at accessibility in a lot of ways. Like is it accessible for all EVs? Is it easily accessible? Can you get to it easily? Is it well lit? Can people of different ages access those stations? So we think about accessibility a lot in the makeup of this work.
Okay, all right. Well, I've never seen a Tesla CHAdeMO plug, but maybe they'll outsourced to a third-party product. I'm not sure, but very interesting times ahead, for sure. There was one notable omission, I think, and this was pointed out to me on Twitter, that the road out west, far west to Broken Hill, there's no sort of charging routes in this round here. Will that be addressed in future rounds? Yeah,
so obviously, you can see the spread there on the map, and it's quite a good spread for the first funding round. Fairly East Coast oriented, but it's got some charges out there, out west, and so kind of going back to that map again, those optimal zones and our priority zones are right across the state, and they're out to Broken Hill as well. So currently, there's some service through the NRMA charges, many of those funded by our transport department, and I believe there's one at Broken Hill, there's some at Broken Hill, Wilcannia, Cobar, Dubbo. I think Ningan's under development as well. So there's kind of a bit of a network in play at the moment. But our priority, we have 8 priority zones between Dubbo and Broken Hill, including Broken and Dubbo and Broken Hill. So there's good coverage there, and it's just about seeing those locations selected in future rounds.
Yep, perfect. Yeah, I agree. There's a plenty of spread, and I guess that's where most of the population are. You've seen on the East Coast there. When is the next funding round, and what can we look forward to?
Yeah, look, so the next funding round we're hopeful to have out before the end of the year. And that will involve a number of changes to the round settings as well. So we're hoping to run a briefing on that within the next 2 to 3 weeks. We can't really talk about too much about what will change and why at this point, but it'll be a much bigger round than this one. So we're looking to build a larger number of stations in round 2, and then hopefully be able to announce that come June next year.
Okay. Let's go on a bit of a tangent at the moment. On the ground, I feel that the price of an EV is still kind of a major barrier to adoption for a lot of Australian drivers. I realise the New South Wales government has outlined a few subsidies already, such as obviously the stamp duty relief and also the $3,000 rebate under a certain price threshold. Are you doing anything else to help actually increase the supply of more affordable EVs into the country as well?
Yeah, look, yes, we are, and it's obviously a big question. And supply and demand go hand in hand, and we know the demand is enormous for electric vehicles, and the supply is not there. And so our electric vehicle strategy, like some others around this country, attack both of those sides of the problem. And so beyond the rebate and the stamp duty exemption that you mentioned, we're focusing on fleets quite a lot in New South Wales. So we have a $105 million fleets incentive. And in fact, the second funding round of that initiative closes tomorrow. So again, looking at getting a lot of electric vehicles in fleets, and that's council fleets, private fleets. And the reason for that is that businesses use vehicles a lot. They have big driving patterns, so they can save a lot of emissions by moving to electric vehicles in many cases, but they also turn those vehicles over quite quickly. So it's creating a secondhand market. So that's one of those things that's really important. But also on fleets, our own fleet, we're electrifying our entire passenger fleet over the rest of the decade, and that's 12,000 vehicles, one of the biggest fleets in Australia, if not the Southern Hemisphere, and that will also contribute to that. And also that demand from our government. Victoria's also got an electrification target for its own state government fleet. Many state governments are starting to look at that, and that creates demand and sends the signal. So I think those things are all important. We're also contributing actively to the national debate on the Commonwealth Electric Vehicle Strategy, which was out for consultation last month. It's a really important part of the puzzle and signal sending out of Australia to the wider world and to the automakers, and we'll see where that goes. But there's a lot of levers that the Commonwealth can pull that will make a big difference to the upfront price and the kind of vehicles that we will see in Australia now and into the future. So they're all big things. And we also, speak with individual automakers about their challenges, what they're bringing, what they're finding, their barriers and those kind of things, and look to, those individual models that might be most suitable to Australia and strategies we can put in place in the future to bring them into the country as well. So yeah, a fair number of things on the boil.
Yep, no, it's a great point about the fleet sales and definitely increasing the used car market for sure. I guess given the increased obvious concerns about the increased cost of living and inflation in Australia and around the world, are there any measures to help keep charging costs low for these new government-funded chargers?
Look, through this funding round, we've focused in on the kind of upfront and capital cost of building them, right? And that's a huge barrier to entry for many players. You see new players now into the market through this funding and potentially in other funding rounds, and you see that nationally and in other states as well, which is great. So, contributing to that cost is a big way to keeping those costs down in the first place, right? So that because there's less for those companies to recoup back in revenue. Outside of that, we stayed away from pricing at this point. There's no regulation of charging pricing. The market is kind of managing that, and it's a very early market. I suspect that will change in coming years, but at the moment it's as it is, and you see prices from 0 cents a kilowatt hour all the way up to 80 cents a kilowatt hour. So there's that range there, but affordability is very important, and I think if things start to get out of kilter, that's when regulators will start to open their eyes and have a look at the market. Yep,
excellent. Well, look, there's plenty of chat in the live stream chat about char demo. I think we've opened a can of worms here as to how people can use adapters and whatnot for Tesla Superchargers. So all I can say is it'll be very interesting watching this space for sure. If anybody wants more information about where the sites are, I've actually basically listed all the applicants, all the successful applicants in a tweet. So I'll leave that in the description too, so you can find out where each location is for your convenience. David and Bradford will be hanging around for the rest of the stream, so if you've got any questions or comments, keep them coming, and we'll try and put up some of the sort of commonly asked ones, and maybe we can throw them those questions as we go on. Let's keep going with some regular segments for the moment. So we've got, of course, new EV sales to talk about, state of origin. We've got very much a New South Wales focused charts coming up with Riz. So Riz, take it away with this one. So this is New South Wales EV uptake in 2022.
Yeah, so interesting to see. We got our data from Transport for New South Wales. We did a bit of number crunching to have a look at what's going on, and the EV uptake obviously continues to grow. Over 1,000 EVs were added in the month of October. About 56% of them were Teslas. So that's quite interesting to see, because usually in October Tesla doesn't do many deliveries. That's outside of their quarterly delivery cycle, but as the almighty Elon said, that they're trying to get out of that cycle and do more and more. And this chart here gives somewhat of an idea in Octobers over the last couple of years and what's happened. And then this October in New South Wales, pretty much from 127 last year to 563 EVs delivered to New South Wales customers within that month. So things are ramping up, and I think this whole delivery peak thing will smooth out over the next 6 to 12 months, and we're just going to get constant deliveries from Tesla in particular, and hopefully other more affordable brands like BYD and the MG as well.
Yeah, and just on the back of that, I'm seeing tweets from Vita Prime, our good friend Vita Prime, on Twitter that he seems to be tweeting ships arriving pretty much every few days now. So it's not that big rush at the end of each quarter, as Riz was saying. They're sort of trickling in now, which is great to see. This is a good one here, Riz. New South Wales Tesla deliveries breakdown by colour, and obviously no surprises here.
Yeah, that's right. It's white seems to be sort of hovering between 50 and 60% every month. But the multicode red, they must have produced a batch and sent it all at once, because that seems to have gone up a little bit, and people are not always willing to spend nearly $3,000 on that color, but those that do love it. They also say red cars go faster, apparently. But no, it's white seems to be dominating, and blue and black are sort of in between. It'd be interesting to see how that mix changes now that the next couple of shipments will include Model 3 deliveries from as far back as February and March. So Tesla still hasn't fulfilled any orders really after March for Model 3s. So they'll be coming in the next month or so. One of our regular viewers, Chris, got an update as well. He ordered, I think, back in February. So he'll be getting his car just before Christmas. And this will jump up and down, but white will probably stay dominant.
Yeah. There's a funny comment from Scott Cassidy. Do speed cameras filter in red now? That'd be a good statistic, actually. What color cars get booked more often? Might be a little project for you, Riz, next time.
Tom and Riz, I've just got a quick question for Dave. Dave, what color of your Model Y would fit in that color wheel?
Look, I'm in the majority there. I have to say I got a white one, but I do like the others. But it's probably controversial if you choose other colors. I don't know.
Fair enough. I guess white cars are easier to keep clean too. That's one thing.
And see at night. I don't know. Yeah.
All right, let's have a look at EV sales when we compare ourselves with the rest of the world. So here we go. Highest selling, this is still internal, but this is highest selling EV models in Australia, top to toe. Take it away, Riz.
Year to date, this doesn't include the October figures. They haven't been compiled by VFAX just yet. But having a look at, just New South Wales alone, it's 500 odd Teslas there. And give or take, New South Wales is usually 30% of Australia's market. So you're probably expecting around 2,000 Tesla deliveries and most of them will be Model Ys because they are not sending too many Model 3s at the moment. So that's going to go up over October, but we'll have an updated chart next week with all of those figures. Polestar has slowed down quite a bit. Their deliveries are quite low compared to where they should be. I think it's supply chain issues. I went to test drive a Volvo C40, which Polestar is sort of a sister company to, and they said 12 months if you want a twin motor or dual motor C40 coupe. And the car's just been launched. I think today was like the third or fourth day for test drives. So Volvo and Polestar seems to be lagging a bit, but hopefully that will change. And Tesla dominating the show, and it'd be exciting to see BYD on there. I know they're not reporting to VFAX just yet, but even in October, I expect them to be sort of the second best-selling EV brand in Australia after Tesla.
I must say I'm a bit surprised by 542 MX-30s from Mazda.
Yeah, it's a bit of a combination because sometimes there is some fleets that are purchasing them because they can purchase Mazdas as they are. But it is, it's in there at the moment, obviously even surpassing the EV6 as such. But maybe Mazda doesn't have, still considered an EV even if it's got 70 kilometers of range.
These are pure electric cars you've got in the chart?
I think all of them are. I will double check the Mazda MX-30 ones for sure, but everything else is electric.
Yep, perfect. All right, so this is global EV uptake comparison 2019 to 2022. So Australia is in the orange color down the bottom, unfortunately. We are sort of riding around the 3.5% mark, I think last time we checked the EV Council report. But we can see the Chinese market is starting to take off on that S-curve at the top there in red.
Yeah, so this is sort of averaged out for the whole year so far. And from what's happening in China, I think they're close to 30% in some of the recent months. So once we do sort of weigh it out across the whole sort of year, I'd say they'd end the year with around 26-27% of all vehicles sold will be EVs. Market there is crazy, and there's so many brands and so many offerings. I heard a funny story the other day. One of my staff members was telling me that in China, there's like a huge discount on Polestar 2s. And here we can't get any. And over there, nobody wants any because they have so many options. So it's really interesting how the dynamics are quite different. And over there, manufacturers are doing everything they can to sell anything they produce, but there's so much competition. And here, on the other hand, we can't even get 800, and they're supposed to be an EV-only brand. So I hope that changes as well, and then we'll start to see our little curve go up. I'm expecting by June next year we'll be at that 5% mark.
Nice. And I just want to put up Keith's comment. Hello, Keith. Keith's a good friend of mine. Polestar had several month hold when they built and shipped Model Year 23 models. They are now starting deliveries from mid-October. Picked mine up last week. Congratulations, Keith.
Congrats.
And he says that delivering approximately 6 per day in Sydney, 1.5 hour delivery window per car.
Ooh.
It's good service.
It's good to know things changing.
Yeah. All right, let's move on to this one. So this is EV uptake tracker from all the way back to 2011. We're seeing in Australia, cumulative EV uptake versus annual sales versus Tesla uptake.
Yeah, so we're nearly, it's climbing a bit quicker than even I expected sort of earlier this year when Tesla had a bit of a slowdown with their deliveries, but since they've started to deliver from August onwards, it's going up. I reckon we're going to easily pass 60,000 EVs before sort of the end of October. Well, once the October figures are collated, we'll be past the 60,000 mark, which is quite good to see. And yeah, Tesla sort of dominating that whole EV space at the moment. So be interesting to see when BYD can deliver cars consistently and what that looks like.
Yeah. Yep, I think we'll need to have a 100,000 EV party next year, maybe. That'd be good. So this is just a quick one. You probably can't see the words there if you're watching. This is US electric vehicle sales. I'll just have a look here. I think it's Tesla Model Y and 3 dominating, obviously, with the graphs way out in front. So obviously Tesla's still dominating the EV market in 2022. Let's have a look at used EV sales. This is an interesting one. We sort of try and put up some interesting ads every now and then. I'll read it out to you. Brand new 2022 Tesla Model 3. No need to go into the waiting list. Available at pickup, brand new. Ready for pickup on the 20th of November. Rear-wheel drive Model 3. Solid black paint, etc. Asking $73,999. So people are still trying to flip cars. Brand new.
Yep, it's happening.
Still very high demand. All right, let's have a look at DC charging when Australia is compared with the rest of the world. So we've touched a bit on charging rates for our DC chargers. This is Europe. We've got some comparisons here. Anything from, 29 euro cents all the way up to 60 euro cents. So somewhere between 50 cents to $1 per kilowatt hour over in Europe.
See, I occasionally get, don't ask me why, but I get ads from UK on charging, and some of the charging operators there are sort of up to 79 pence a kilowatt hour. So, that's nearly approaching £1 a kilowatt hour, but their prices with winter coming is quite different once again. So yeah, DC fast charging prices just vary so much, and I still feel we're quite fortunate to be even paying 69 cents at the Tesla Superchargers, which seems like a lot, but frequency of use for most people is quite low. So, once in a while, using the Superchargers at the prices that they are asking for in Australia is pretty reasonable still. And most fast charging operators are quite good as long as they're working.
Yep.
And still cheaper than the Bowser, right?
Yeah, correct. Yeah, I always say it's more expensive at the superchargers and DC chargers because you're paying for a different thing. You're paying for convenience and the speed as opposed to slower charging at home. Question for Dave and Bradford here, actually, from Sydney EV. Is the New South Wales government funding slower destination charging sites such as national parks, etc.?
Good question. Yes, so we are certainly doing that. So we've got an initiative called our Destination Charging Grants. Now this one's still open. The first funding round's open until the 11th of November, so that's next week actually. And it's oriented at supporting regional destinations, and so that including the Blue Mountains, but then all of regional New South Wales to install AC chargers. So 7 kilowatt chargers, 22 kilowatt chargers, dual ports even in there, that kind of thing. So the state government's supporting those businesses, those sites, and it's pretty much any destination you can think of, accommodation, entertainment, cafes, shopping centers, that kind of thing. And so we're funding 75% of the cost of the charger, 75% of the cost of the installation as well, with $1,000 cap per charger, and then funding for the software on top of that as well. Because for those sites to be able to, if they're putting in a number of chargers, and we can support up to 4 chargers per site, they want to understand what those chargers are doing, be able to see them, see if they're in use, see the fault, and also bill for them as well if they wish. And again, it's up to the site whether they wish to bill or not. So the intent of that program, it's $20 million initiative, and it's we'll see probably over 3,000 destination chargers roll out through that program. And that's I think that's fantastic news, because what it means is that all of these fast charging stations will be there to enable trips, do fast charging, do that piece of the work, and then these destination charges mean in the future you'll be able to go anywhere, and you're going down to Bateman's Bay. Well, there's 15, 20 charging options. You don't have to think about it, which is really what the majority, when we get to the the mass market and the majority of people buying EVs, they don't want to fiddle around and find that charger 2 weeks in advance of their trip. They just want to get there and be able to charge, and that's the future we're aiming for with that program. So thanks for the question.
Yep. People still ask me, well, what if you run out of charge? Well, I just plan my trips. They look at me funny, like, planning a road trip, what does that mean?
Yeah.
There is a product called EcoFlow. It's a battery you can put in the back. It's about 40 kilos, and it's got 3.5 odd kilowatt hours of storage. And yeah, it seems to work. I saw it at the All Energy Expo a couple of, I think last week. So quite a cool little product on wheels. But yes, I mean, you shouldn't need to carry one, but if you do, if you're that worried about it, then yeah, I think it's worth purchasing that one.
Yeah, just to get you to the next DC charger, right? Dave and Bradford, is there like an app, like a one app to rule them all for these chargers, or we're going to rely on individual providers with their own apps?
Brad, why don't you have a go at this one?
Yeah, sure. So what we have done, so in the first instance is built that master plan, but that's more oriented at planners and developers, so those charge point operators, and looking at what the market will look like. We haven't landed on a specific one app approach yet, but it is something that we're working towards. And we're working very closely with industry on that one as well. So looking at how can we get API feeds, how can we feed all of that information into a single database that can be then used, particularly in infotainment systems within the vehicles themselves, to plan trips and routes. That, though, is still something that's under development, and there's still a lot of discussion around which protocols are going to be the ones that end up being the most dominant and the ones that will be used by the market. And then there's a question around how do we manage or ensure compliance with that as well. So at this stage, it's something we would like. We're very keen to see that developed, and we're working with some of the peak bodies around that as well. But at this stage, it's the very, very early stages of its fruition.
And yeah, I was just going to add to that. The other thing, sorry, Tom. The other thing to note is that the stations that we're funding will require credit card payment systems to be in place, right? Like tap and go kind of credit card systems, and that was in recognition of this exact same question, right? That you don't need to have the 6 different apps to access the network. You can just tap and go, at least on these New South Wales government funded ones. So that was a really important aspect of accessibility that we ensured was part of it.
Yep, no, that was exactly my question, Dave, so thank you. That's good.
Sure.
All right, let's keep going with our segments. So, just another reminder, if you want to vote for a supercharger, this is where you go. Supercharging voting is still open, so check that out on the Tesla website. And let's do some more government incentives. So this one is from Port Phillip Council in Victoria. So I saw this on the news tonight, so I thought I'd put it up. And it's a little trial they're running down in Victoria where people without off-street parking, they've got this little thing that you can pull out of the ground and charge your vehicle that way on the curbside, and that's connected to your own charger in your own home. I guess they tunnel under the ground. I thought that was quite innovative for anybody with no off-street parking. And you can lock that charger as well, so no one steals your cable or whatnot. Cool, that's good to see. Some more innovative solutions. Let's have a look at this one. So this was released by EV Council. There's 100 signatories on this, at least, saying that Australia can be an electric vehicle powerhouse. So great to see people in the EV and renewable space coming forward to say, look, we can do this. We can move forward together and turn Australia into an EV powerhouse. So great to see people backing that initiative. And let's have a look at some EV charging eye candy. So maybe we can get some ideas for these new providers who've got government funding. So this is some nice pictures from around the world. So this is from California, Mountain View, California in the USA. Here's BP. Is this a prototype or is this reality here?
I think it will become reality, and I believe it's a partnership that BP is doing with Hertz. So Hertz has a very large sort of rental fleet they've already purchased. And yeah, they will be able to use these giga hubs. So they're starting out in Mountain View, California, but they'll be rolling them out. But I don't think the site is there just yet. Okay,
so this is the prototype or concept. Still looks nice though. Hopefully we'll see that in reality very soon in Australia too. This is Zurich, Switzerland. Another sort of nice, pretty EV charging that's quite well lit. It's quite nice. That's Chempower, isn't it? Looks like Chempower
I
charger.
think it might be ABB, but they've got a car with an ABB sticker on it, but could be Chempower.
Yep. And this one is in Germany. Another charging location.
Unique design.
Yeah.
but people with trailers and other things can park up, I think.
Yeah. Apologize for those listening on podcasts. You can't see this obviously, but you can imagine, right? Just close your eyes and picture a beautiful charging site with amenities. Yeah, that's what we want to see in Australia.
Wind farms in the background.
Wind farms in the background, exactly. Charging utopia. This is from France. Some more DC chargers there.
Yep, Total Energies. They're doing a bit of work all around the world, actually. So it'd be interesting to see if they enter Australian market over the coming years with just offering a charging solution and no petrol stations.
Yep, very good. And this is local. This is Sydney. Tesla owners tweeted this site in, let's see, Revesby North in Sydney. Yeah, we know BP is putting in chargers, so this is coming to Sydney, a Sydney petrol station very soon. So they're installing 3 bays, looks like, at a petrol station. So, yeah, becoming more of a common sight in Australia, which is great. Nothing spotted this week, but I want to remind viewers again about the Fully Charged live show coming to Sydney in March 11 and 12, 2023, so next year. Myself, Riz and Rahul will be there. And if you want to come and say hello, that's where we'll be. So come along. And we might actually have some news very soon about that. We might be hosting some live streams from that event. So if you want to come and watch a live stream in person, that's where you should go. Live, Fully Charged live next year. Will we be seeing Dave and Bradford there, maybe?
Yeah, we'll be coming along. Yeah, hometown, you know.
Nice. There you go. If you want to see Dave and Bradford, that's where they'll be too. Thanks, guys. Let's look at some Tesla news real quick. So yes, Model S Plaid and Model X Plaid will make its debut in the Chinese International Import Expo on the 5th of November, which is in 2 days' time. And Optimus Spot will be there as well. So we'll get some pictures of that next week. So there's a video of the Model S Plaid there on the showroom floor at the expo. Looking good there in red. And news that Panasonic has kicked off a EV battery plant in Kansas in the US, supplying Tesla batteries for 4680 type chemistry. So it's good. And breaking news from Darren, my friend in Singapore, Tesla Model Y is the top selling car in Singapore in September 2022. Top selling car, full stop. Not just EV, top selling car. So they sold 219 Model Ys in Singapore, far ahead of any other model EV or ICE. So that's great to see. All right, so no BYD news this week, but we've got some more other EV news, which is, first one, so Volvo parent Geely starts making $40,000 electric utes in China. And of course, the Chinese have the same 3-point plug that we do, so that makes it very easy to send their cars over here.
And these are banned from cities like Shanghai. So the laws they have, you can't have commercial sort of vehicles in the inner city areas. So if they don't want them, we can have them here.
Yeah,
At $40,000 a pop, we'll sell plenty. I believe that's what it's for. Like, these are probably too small for the American market, and the European market isn't really that interested. It would just be interesting to see if they do come, what brand they would fall under.
Yep.
Would it be Volvo, which is premium, Polestar, which is premium, or would Geely be launching the Radar brand in Australia? So just something to keep on your radar.
Nice. Question for Dave and Bradford. A couple of questions already in the chat. Is there any provision for larger bays for trailers with the funding?
Yeah, so we took that into account in merit assessment, the kind of size of the bay and whether larger vehicles could access that. It wasn't a fixed requirement, and that was because the program's oriented at passenger and light commercial vehicles, right? Like the majority of EVs in the first few years, but it was merit assessed. And some of those stations it's in places kind of like truck stops and so forth. So some of them will cater for those larger vehicles. Brad?
It might also be worth mentioning as well, we run a process to find landowners and leaseholders that have available spaces that might be interested in leasing or hosting a charging station as well. And so when we ran that process for round one, we had 220 sites come forward just from local owners across the state. And so some own places like caravan parks, some have land on major roads or highways or next to stops in particular as well. So this is a great opportunity, particularly for those that do have land that they might want to use or put towards something like this to register their interest in that as well, because we'll be looking for new sites and landowners in the coming weeks in the lead up to round two as well.
Okay, cool. We'll watch this space. Let's move on to the next slide. So this one's quite an interesting one. So the electric revolution, it reads, leaving black and brown communities behind. This is an article from the US. I guess the theme of this article is about the EV revolution, possibly not allowing, I guess, communities of lower socioeconomic status being able to afford one, having access to these kind of vehicles. I mean, I'm asking Dave and Bradford, is there any provision for this in that Grand Master Plan in New South Wales?
Look, quite a political topic, right? Socioeconomics and stuff, quite broad in terms of it's beyond electric vehicles. But I think, building out a broad public charging networks a first step, right? Because then you have, and making it everywhere, right? Like, so we were like wealth agnostic in terms of building out our plans for where those charging stations were. It's just that we want good coverage for everybody. And so that's one part of the picture. And then, down the track, it's about looking at other mechanisms for trying to get EV ownership in the hands of people that can't have it now. And part of that's like getting down the cost curve, right? So we know that it's a global issue. But there's things like, you start to see subscriptions come into place, some models around subscriptions or kind of semi-rental subscription style approaches in apartment buildings. So that, your car next door style thing, but within an apartment building. So that's the building's EV that people can take out and use. Those kind of things are useful to help with that equity issue.
Yep, no, good answer. And the subscription model is great too. Yep, that will certainly help. A good comment from Charles Gregory says, every technology starts out expensive and the prices gradually drop. Remember the first flat widescreen TVs? That's so true. They were very expensive. And now you can buy from Aldi.
Yeah, I still don't have one. So what's that?
Aldi catalog, Riz. No, they are more affordable though. That's true. The big news out of today was that Volvo, today or yesterday, Volvo is to go all electric in Australia by 2026, which is actually 4 years earlier than the global pledge by Volvo 2030. So that's fantastic. I mean, that came out and say, yep, we're going to go all out by 2026. That's very good. I wonder what that will mean for Polestar, whether Polestar will do this well. I mean, they're kind of all electric already.
I really wish Volvo all the best because they've always sort of taken the lead in a lot of these initiatives. And the Volvo C40 I drove today, it on the inside of the door panels, it had like recycled carpet. So, the sustainability element of the things that they're trying to do is quite good, and they sort of are different in many ways. And hopefully if they can, in the next 12 months or so, get the supply issues a little bit more under control, they are awesome cars to drive. And then if they have other brands like Radar and others offering affordable EVs, like Geely is offering a lot of affordable EVs in China, and they're made for the world market. So hopefully we can see more of them following the lead that Volvo is doing in Australia and having just EVs by 2026.
Yep, that's great. Very good from Volvo. Congratulations. Let's have a look at some renewable energy news to wrap up tonight. So this is a tweet from Simon Holmes a Court saying that the renewable energy continues its march in Australia's national electricity market. So we can see that. Let me try and read this graph here. So yes, we are starting to use more and more green energy as time goes on. This is the graph going back to 2000. So good to see all up. And then conversely, unfortunately, we are still, despite the benefit of a global pandemic and drought, the OpenNEM tweet said Australia's emissions have barely reduced over the last 8 years, so that's not as comforting. There we go. All right, gentlemen, that pretty much wraps up tonight. Before we do that, I just want to once again thank you to our guests, Dave and Bradford from New South Wales Government. Thank you, gentlemen, for a very insightful question and answer time. Thank you.
Great. Thanks for having us again. Really appreciate being the opportunity and all your work as well. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Tom.
No, you're more than welcome. And you're more than welcome to come back anytime to with any updates you might have, particularly when funding round 2 opens up. All right, and thank you for all your questions to everyone on the chat. They were very good. We'll try to put them up as much as we can. If you've got any more questions or comments, leave them in the comments section if you're watching this on replay as well. And I just want to thank once again our sponsors and partners for tonight, Jawa, Hansho, and EVSC. I'll leave the links to their websites and coupon codes in the video description below. And next week, we've got Dennis Savick from Savick Motorcycles coming on to talk all things electric motorcycles, so that should be a good one. If you've got any questions or comments or points about EV motorcycles, because I must admit that's not really my forte, feel free to send me an email or leave a comment or send me a tweet or whatever you want, and I'll ask those questions for all of you. All right, so that's next week. So yeah, thank you everyone once again for watching. I want to thank our regulars as well, Riz and Rahul. Thank you, gents, as always.
Thanks, Tom, Dave, Bradford, Rahul.
And Dave and Bradford, thank you for coming on today. Tom, I just want to quickly point out a few things. If people don't already know, a tweet by Electric Vehicle Council of Australia. EVs will be permitted to drive in transit lanes until 31st of October 2023 in New South Wales. And New South Wales has seen the fastest growth in Australia in EVs with an 84% increase last year. So congratulations. Obviously, all your policies are reaping the benefits. So yeah, great work. Keep doing that. I just quickly wanted to ask Dave and Bradford, are there any media channels, are there any communication channels, any social media channels, any social handles that we could follow to keep updated of the funding rounds as they're progressing?
Well, probably our websites are the best place to go, because anything that comes out goes on there immediately with all the detail. So all of, maps, funding guidelines, and so forth. Also on those pages, you can actually just sign up to our newsletter. So we don't spam mailboxes with them, but that's a good. Every time something goes out, we'll put it out to our mailing list. That's a really good place to get New South Wales EV information. And then we like announcements, so you probably see it in the newspaper if there's some big things coming out as well. Yeah.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Fantastic. Thanks, Dave, and thank you, Bradford. And thanks to everyone who watched tonight and left your comments. And thank you for watching on podcast. And thank you for watching on replay. We'll see you all next time. Ciao. Happy charging. See you all.